Welcome to the Binge Breakers podcast. I'm Jacqueline. I am here to teach you how I overcame bulimia and my binge eating disorder, and how you can too. Through simple steps of mind management, repairing your relationship with yourself, understanding your habits, and intuitive eating. Hi everyone, I am here with Hetti Jayne, and she is super kind. She is someone that I met on Instagram, and she, at the moment, she has an awesome Instagram where she promotes eating disorder awareness, and she helps women end the war between food and their bodies. And I love her Instagram personally because she shares a lot of helpful, inspirational posts. She's been through an eating disorder herself, so she knows all about it, and now she's just promoting a lot of great stuff on there. So I'm going to introduce her, and we'll get started with the interview. So hi, Hetti. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you being on with me. And I just would love for you to share who you are with my audience, and, then we could go from there.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me on, Jacqueline. I feel very honoured. So, hi everyone. My name's Hetti. I'm from the UK, in case you've not realised from my accent. So I'm at the moment I'm a mindset and food freedom fitness coach. So I sort of cover a lot of different areas. And yeah, my story is quite a long-winded story, but it's something that I'm super passionate about. Um, I've been through a lot of numerous different eating disorders in the past, and it's been a long journey. But I really feel passionate now about sharing my story with other people to help spread awareness to other people and help them recover as soon as you can. Unfortunately, I didn't get treatment, so I did it all on my own, which I wouldn't always advise to do. But like I said, it's something that I'm super passionate about.
I mean, it's somewhat obviously you should seek help whenever possible, but I think it's inspiring you were able to overcome it on your own,
Yeah,
because a lot of people think that they need some sort of external thing, and it's like you can get through this.
exactly.
So, and yeah,
100%.
if you can you share us a bit of your story? Don't worry if it's long-winded. Love
Yeah,
to hear
yeah, definitely. Get ready, everybody. 6
it.
So I guess it kind of my sort of childhood background. I was from the ages of, I think I went on my first diet when I was about 7 years old, so I was pretty young. And when I was younger, there was a lot of talk about diets, about weight issues. I don't want to trigger anybody with same words, but I would refer myself to as a chubby kid at school, which I think is, totally normal. Kids grow up and kind of get out of that stage. But I was carrying a little bit more weight than some of my friends were at school, which to a certain point is fine. And then obviously when you get into, you know, secondary school and junior school, that's when sort of kids started name calling me and, calling me different names because I looked different to, my super skinny friends at the time. Um so I guess that's when I started becoming really aware of me feeling very different and almost feeling like I was a problem that I needed to change in order to, feel accepted. Which I think is quite common for a lot of people. I think this is kind of where most eating disorders tend to start from. Not all of them, but most of them. So yeah, so I started dieting when I was 7 years old. Went from diet to diet. I wasn't so serious about it when I was that age because obviously you're still young, you're still growing up. Um, and then I guess how old would I have been? Probably when I was in secondary school, so I'd probably be about 13 or 14. That was when I started extreme dieting and I fell into, eating disorder behaviors, very secrecy and a very secret behavior with food and having a very disordered relationship around food and my body, which sort of led into anorexia as well. So I sort of dipped my toe in anorexia for a little while I was at school, and then I would then I started binge eating. So this sort of restrictive binge cycle continued for around 5 years. I would say it was around 5 years, and then I went into college. So that's, I know you guys call it, college is like our university, but it's like the step before university over in the UK.
Oh, okay.
So um, just reference for any Americans listening to this. So yeah, so I went to college. I started, drinking, as kids do when they're growing up. Um, and this cycle of, I gained quite a lot more weight at this point. Um, and I was drinking regularly because, again, I was trying to fit in with people. I thought that's what you were supposed to do at that age. But this whole very disordered relationship with food was almost just increasing and increasing. A lot of my friends were very body conscious, and we were always talking about diets and celebrities being, losing weight and things like that. And so this cycle of just trying to restrict my food as much as I could, only to then go home and just binge eat. So I would just eat large amounts of food, and then obviously the drinking on top. So it was a really, really destructive period of time, which I then left college and had sort of a year to kind of just figure myself out, I guess, on what I wanted to do, and what my interests were, I guess. And this was at the point then when I fell into anorexia again. So unfortunately, and I have heard this as well before, that eating disorders tend to thrive in isolation, and this period of time was very isolating in a sense, because my sister had left. She'd just got married, so she moved out, and my friends were all going to university, so they were traveling further away, and I felt at a loose end almost, that I didn't know what I wanted to do. um and that's how I kind of fell into what I thought was fitness at the time. I had this goal of losing a lot of weight, and I did so in a really unhealthily restrictive way, which was probably the turning point. And all the binging prior to this point was almost very tame, because during this time when I started restricting myself very heavily, I was really restricting all of my food, um which I think can only go on for so long until your body sort of reacts to that restriction. And that's exactly what happened to my body. So at this point, I didn't think I was ill. I didn't think there was a problem. I thought, I was just wanting to lose weight and lose weight, and that was sort of my goal. Um, and then I remember my first binge, and I've talked about this actually on one of my YouTube videos, because I just feel like it doesn't even make sense, but I try and emphasize to people that if you've restricted your food intake for so long, your body is going to react to it. It's not going to put up with that any longer, and it will get whatever it can in whatever sense it can. And my first binge was on muesli. So I don't know if you guys have
I
that
don't know
in
what that
the
is.
States. Basically like the most boring cereal you could ever get. It's basically just like oats, but with a few dried fruits thrown
Mm.
in. So it's not like your typical binge food, but my body was just so hungry for it, and I ate a large amount of that in one sitting, and I was kind of like, after, I was like, what the hell have you just done? Why did you do that? And obviously all the guilt started to flood in. Um and so that's sort of how this binge cycle started. Um at this point it was very out of control, and I've talked about this on other videos on my YouTube channel as well, that it was almost like an out of body experience. It was like I had physically no control over myself. It wasn't like, oh, I just have a few pieces. It was like, I'd been possessed for a period of time. And I, you know, I ate a large amount of food, and this continued and continued, in a vicious cycle. And I didn't realize that it was my body trying to fight back. So I thought back then, because I think that there wasn't much information out there about extreme hunger, and the how binging, the causes of binge eating as well. So to me, I just thought I'd lost willpower. I thought I was lacking in discipline, and I was, you know, beating myself up because I was thinking, why, what, you've done all of this, you've lost all this weight, and now you can't control yourself. Like, what's wrong with you? And that was sort of my internal dialogue. So this is when sort of I kind of fell into, the binging and over exercising. So for me, I was never able to throw up, although I'd tried. I couldn't do that. So my sort of purging technique, if you like, was to overexercise, and that was sort of my outlet. So this cycle of binging on large amounts of food to then overexercise for hours, even through, I had injuries at the time because I was just putting my body through so much stress. I also suffered from insomnia during this time as well. Well, for quite a while actually, but this is sort of
Wow.
when my insomnia started. So I wasn't sleeping, I was binging and then over exercising for large amounts of time throughout the day. Um, and I know I even mentioned to you the other day that I would even exercise even when I had a full stomach of food. Like, just whenever some of that food had gone down and digested, I would force myself to do vigorous workouts that weren't just a walk down the street. It was a lot of plyometric work and running and things like that. So
I can't
my body
imagine
was,
how hard that would have been. How
it was
awful.
yeah, it was horrific. And like, I know we've kind of mentioned it before, that when you're in that cycle, it kind of feels like the norm. It's just like, well, that's what you've got to do. What would you do without it? And it just took over my life at that point. And I've never had suicidal thoughts in my life, but I remember during that period that, I was driving to work at the time, or driving home from work rather, and I was just thinking, if this car crashed, I wouldn't even care. Like, it just got to that point that it was just so exhausting mentally and physically, and it was like this big secret that nobody else knew about, and I just felt so ashamed. And again, I thought it was my fault that I didn't have motivation. I lacked the discipline. um do you want me to carry on and talk about how that sort of led on into binge eating as well?
Well, yeah, so thank you for sharing. And
It's so
uh,
long-winded.
there's a lot of good things I want to cover in there, but I think the biggest thing that gives a good idea of like how much you struggle, the biggest thing is like maybe how did you get out of it? But I just wanted to say that car crash thing, when you said that, I remembered I was very depressed and I was having suicidal thoughts a lot, but it was most commonly in the car. I would
Yeah,
think like I just kind of want to drive into that tree. I would think that all
yeah,
the time on the way home, and I never did it, obviously, since I have loved ones in my life, and I didn't want to cause them any pain. But I also always had my dog in the car, and I was like,
yeah,
I don't want him to get hurt. But it's
yeah.
crazy how much bulimia and binge eating just sucks the life out of you. It makes
It
you
really
not
does.
appreciate your life at all.
It so does, and it, like I said, like, I've never had suicidal thoughts before, and anyone that knows me will know, that's just not like me at all. But I, like you say, it's just like you're carrying around this demon with you around 24/7, and you just want it to end. And yeah, I kind of felt exactly the same. Like, if this car crashed right now, I would not even care. Like, just let it be over.
Yeah, it's
which
miserable.
luckily, I mean, that didn't happen. But it's for anyone that is kind of in that right now. I know exactly how you feel, and it's just horrible. But you can get out of it, obviously, which is what we're talking about today.
Right. Yeah. And how did you start taking steps to get out of it?
So again, it was kind of long-winded, I guess. But so at this point, I'll also mention. So after sort of my anorexic period of severe restriction, I then started and fell into personal training. So I thought I'd found my purpose because I'd lost weight, and I thought, well, I'm going to help other people do that, which I would not recommend doing it the way I did. But
We were
um,
talking about this earlier. We laughed that like we were both personal trainers at one point.
yeah, I feel like not every personal trainer, but I feel like most have got some kind of history with something like this.
Yeah.
Um, so I was working full time, and I was actually studying at the same time, becoming a personal trainer. So um, obviously, being around a gym environment as well, whilst you're kind of dealing with this, was probably the most difficult and triggering thing, because obviously I had all this going off in the background, and yet I had to go to work and put on a smiley face and pretend, that I was fine, and, trying to motivate people and talk about weight loss, which I found really difficult, especially, I don't know whether you found this as well, but when people would come up to me and tell me like, "Oh, I've lost weight," that really triggered me, and it was almost like, why can't you get your shit together? You're struggling, and all these people are doing better than you. It was such a difficult situation and environment to be in at that time, mentally.
Yeah,
Uh,
I found it super hard to be happy for any of my friends that were losing
yeah,
weight. Or I think my partner, like he's a personal trainer, but he studied integrative physiology very heavily into that realm, loves it. But he was losing weight at one point, and I found it really like I wanted to be mean to him about
yeah,
it. And it was so backwards, and I couldn't be happy. And then I would just turn it around. I'd take his success and be like, "Oh, woe is me," and he would be
yeah.
like, "I'm happy. I don't understand."
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It's so, when you've got all this mental chatter going on as well, it's like anyone you see that's got either a normal relationship with food or they're losing weight effortlessly, you almost hate them because you're just, dealing with all of this. Um so I was working full time in the gym at this point, and obviously continued with the over exercising. Back then, it almost was a little bit easier because I had the gym to my disposal. So as soon as I finished work, I would just train in the gym, rather than at home. But then I started to study, and I heard the term. I think it was from Lane Norton, actually, if anyone here knows him. But I heard the term of a almost like a broken metabolism, or something along those lines, like a dysfunctional metabolism, and how that can stop you from losing weight, basically. Um, and it kind of clicked then, and I thought, that's what I've done. I've broken my metabolism, so it's stopping me from losing weight, and this is why, I'm overeating. And I didn't even think that the overeating and binging was a problem. I was just focused on, I need to lose weight, I need to lose weight, I need to, be more motivated, and I need to be more disciplined. So I studied quite a lot and did a lot of research on like metabolism and how our metabolism, burns energy, and what builds that up, and that sort of thing. And I started weight training back then. So before then, I was always doing cardio, a cardio bunny. And then I started lifting weights, which I really enjoyed. And I learned a lot as well. And that, I guess, that kind of opened up that passion, because I really did enjoy that. But again, my main focus was, right, I need to build muscle, I need to build my metabolism up. And what I heard as well is that the more cardio you do, that will slow your metabolism down. So I stopped doing all of the cardio back then. And I thought, do you know what? Maybe I need to stop restricting my food and eat more in order to build my metabolism up. So it kind of made sense. And, I was following all these fitness professionals on YouTube and trying and becoming obsessed with that. I guess that was like my next obsession. Like, I need to build up a metabolism that's, super fast and efficient. So I focused a lot on that, and I pulled back a lot of the excessive amounts of cardio. At this point, I would say I stopped restricting as much. I think there was probably still some restriction there, but the binging went down a hell of a lot at this point. So I stopped the exercise or the excessive amounts of cardio and stopped dieting for a period of time, and just kind of let my body, I guess you could say I kind of went all in at that point. And obviously I gained a little bit of weight, and with that I thought, I was kind of happy at this point, because I felt like I had a bit of a goal that I was kind of working towards. But at the same time, again, like working in a gym, it was super triggering. I'd get a lot of comments off of people that used to come in the gym asking if I was bulking, and that I was getting bigger. And
It's crazy they said those things. That would
yeah,
I don't know if that's just like a culture thing, but that would be really rude to say here.
when I heard it, I was just like, it was difficult. Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
don't even know if that is a culture thing, because it is really rude. Like, I'd never
Yeah.
do that to anybody. But yeah, so that, it was a difficult time, because I was kind of in this space of like, what am I doing? Like, I'm actively wanting to get bigger. What am I kind of playing at? But at the same time of this, I kind of I fell into learning about boxing, and I became obsessed with the sport boxing. And I don't know if you've heard of it, but Olympic style weightlifting. So
Yeah.
usually what you see in CrossFit gyms and stuff. So
I've
that,
always wanted to do boxing, by the way. I do weightlifting, love it, but boxing, it always seems so cool and athletic and tough. It's
yeah,
awesome.
I love it. Like, I love martial arts and things like that. I've always found it amazing that people can do that. So I then started focusing more on that, and I think at this point it kind of saved me a little bit, because especially with Olympic weightlifting, it's not a sport that is designed or focusing on aesthetics. It's not about, oh well, she's super lean so she can clean and jerk whatever. It was about your technique, and it was about how much you could lift and being strong. And then obviously the boxing, it was like almost like a bit of a mental escape as well. And I feel like that really did help me, and it did kind of give me a bit of an outlet where I didn't have to think about this problem anymore. And it's almost like I felt a little bit more accepted as well for just who I was. At this weight I can deadlift this, or this weight I can squat this. So that did help. But then I fell into dieting again, and I guess social pressures got the best of me, and I thought, no, I want to look like a bodybuilder. So I hired a coach, and he was probably the worst coach that I've ever had.
Oh no.
Yeah, I feel like everyone needs a bad coach to realize what a good coach is. But yeah, I hired a coach, and I even explained to him, I've had eating disorders in the past. At this point, I was also teaching spin classes like 3-4 times a week. So my cardio was still, it was pretty high, but I was eating a lot more and just kind of um, letting myself kind of just go with the flow and not dieting at all. So um, I told him that, and I'm not going to give out any numbers on here, but it was like stupidly low on calories that he gave me, and I think I lasted around a month, and I was paying him a lot of money. So I thought, because he charges so much, he must be a good coach. That, if you've ever thought that about a coach, don't buy into it, because it's not true. Um, he basically just disregarded everything I said. I thought me sort of being vulnerable and telling him about my history, he would take that into account, and he didn't. He again, just put me on a really, really restricted diet. So I lasted that a few weeks, 4 weeks, and I just thought, do you know what? I don't want to live like this. I was eating, like, what was it? Turkey mince with coconut oil and broccoli for breakfast. And I just
Turkey
thought,
mint?
turkey mince. So what would you, ground turkey, I think you guys call
Oh,
it.
ew. That's,
Yeah,
yeah, it's
with
not fun.
bile. And I don't even like coconut oil. So I was eating that at breakfast, and I just thought, you know what, this is not for me.
Yeah.
I am not about this life. So I kind of just called it quits there, and I thought, no, this is not even worth it. And after that point, I had a period of time where I, binged quite a bit on, carbohydrates, because I'd not eaten carbs in so long. Um, and again, this kind of during this period, I kind of had almost like a bit of an epiphany, I guess. And I know I mentioned this to you last time, that all the while all this was going off, and I had friends from school that always had what I would consider a normal relationship with food. They never talked about going on diets. I don't think they even weighed themselves. So they had no idea how much they weighed, what a calorie was. And they just naturally just stayed at the same weight. There was no fluctuation. Whereas with me, I was just obsessive about food and exercise, and my weight would just go up and down all the time. And I just felt like I just want to live a normal life. Um, so I think at this point, that was when I discovered intuitive eating, in which I kind of dipped my toe in here and there, and as we all do. um,
Don't want
and
to commit just yet, just like
yeah,
baby.
don't want to commit just yet. So I'll do it for a little bit, see if it works. So I did that for a little bit, and I would sort of flutter around between intuitive eating and tracking my calories. And I noticed when I was eating intuitively, uh, I was, I then allowed myself to go out for dinner with my friends, and it felt so freeing. But whenever I was tracking my food, it was like everything sort of tensed up, and it was like, oh God, well, I'm gonna have to check what's on the menu, or I'm gonna have to eat this beforehand and not eat there. And it was so, just rigid and so mental, rather than just being there with my friends and being able to enjoy the food. Um, so it kind of gave me that sense of freedom of what it could be like if I was to just let go of all the rules. Um, and then, unfortunately, I went back and hired another coach, because clearly I didn't believe that it would work, which he was a slightly better coach, but still I ran into the same problems. My calories got quite low towards the end, and I then started to obsess about food. I was thinking about food all the time, and just again feeling like this alien, like everyone else has got their shit together with food, and yet here's me obsessing over it and obsessing over the scale or how many steps I've done that day and all of these things. And at this point, that was at the point when I kind of stopped with, well, for a period of tracking my food, and I thought, do you know what, I'm sick of binging. I'm just sick of it, and I'm so over it. So I just let myself eat whatever I want and just eat intuitively. um then I moved to Australia for 2 years, which I think was the turning point really of this whole thing, and it kind of really set in stone all of these things that I've thought previously about intuitive eating and trusting my body. Because I went back and tracked my food for quite a while, and again wanted to lose weight, so I lost, weight doing that. And on the outside I looked really fit and my leanest, but actually I was still obsessing about food and this mental kind of chatter, and it was almost like I just couldn't just be in the moment and just enjoy food and just be there. So I decided again, I'm going to commit to intuitive eating this time, and I'm actually going to see what I can do, and trust my body instead of just feeling like I always need to diet, instead of just trusting my body. um and during this time, I think that was when Stephanie Buttermore went all in, if anyone here follows Stephanie Buttermore as well.
Yeah.
um and that, it was, I kind of feel like it was a bit of a sign from the universe, almost, to say, like, Stephanie Buttermore's doing it, because that it's something's not right here. And she was experiencing the same things as me, feeling really, really hungry all the time, and just thinking about food nonstop. And but then obviously with me, I was also binging on top of that, so it just felt right to commit fully to intuitive eating, and thinking about it in the long term as well. I was like, I actually don't want to be attached to an app for the rest of my life. I want to be able to trust my body, and other people do it, so why can't I?
It's
And
not
yeah,
very practical.
exactly. And yeah, so I did a lot of sort of inner work, and kind of assessed assess myself, I guess, and realized, the binge eating was a habit and the overeating was a habit. But when you release that restriction, um, and allow your body to kind of just eat intuitively, the binge urges do reduce quite a bit as well. Um, and yeah, that's a long-winded story, but yeah.
No, it's great. So you committed eventually to intuitive eating, and I think a lot of us go through this where it's like you see, like you say, you see those people that don't pay attention to their food at all, and yet they weigh the same all the time. And I was just like you; I was always like up, down, up, down. People thought I was mad, but you see them and you think that they're aliens or they're like somehow special, and you're like, that can't work for me. There's no
That's
way.
it, yeah.
And you also, like, when you think of intuitive eating, like, for a long time I did calorie count forever, and I think there were some benefits in knowing. I use Chronometer instead of my MyFitnessPal, so it tells you a lot more of the micronutrients and stuff like that. So there was knowledge in doing that because now I know, hey, this has this amount in it and it has this nutrients in it. But
Yeah.
for the long term, it's not great. But anyway, the idea for me of giving up that, I was like terrified that I would gain weight forever or I would do all this. And I didn't do what Stephanie Buttermore did. I kind of just intuitively ate, but I didn't try to just like eat to fullness. I just ate to satiation and
Yeah.
tried to understand that because binging, the type of fullness you feel with binging is not the fullness
Oh,
that
no.
you want to have for normal meals. So how did you get over that fear? Well, you were just done with it. Is that what it was?
It's so strange, really, I guess, because I'd I'd almost then become obsessed with just researching this kind of thing. And I was, you know, looking at other people, even my partner, he I don't think he's ever dieted in his life or counted a calorie, and yet he eats what he wants, and he's always stayed sort of at his normal weight. And I I think the first time round of sort of going all in, it was a way to kind of, I need to build my metabolism. So that means I need to build as much muscle as possible. And, that's going to, solve all this problem. Um, but I guess for me, I got to a point where I had that much mental restriction. And I think that's something that people don't always think about, that we can have restriction, physical restriction, like, oh, I can only eat this amount of calories, or I can only eat this amount during these times, or whatever. Um, but you can also have mental restriction as well, where you choose to eat something, but maybe you only eat a little bit and you save a little bit when really you deep down wanted that other piece of the cookie or whatever. Or you almost fool yourself into not buying certain products because you're scared of them. And I guess I got to a point where I couldn't remember ever being able mentally, ever feeling like I was ever able to just buy something that I wanted because I liked the taste of it. For me, it was like I'd gone through my whole life just buying foods because either it was low fat or it was low calorie, or these are slightly less than this, or if I buy those, I'm going to binge on them. So I kind of got to a point where I was like, what would it be like if I just lived like a normal person and just bought the foods that I wanted? How would that kind of feel? And I guess my kind of mindset was the less I restrict, maybe the less I will binge. Um, and I definitely don't always agree that going, this all in approach is, the best route for everybody. And going
Yeah.
back, I probably wouldn't have done that. Um, but I guess it's like a different route to a destination. I guess it's if you're living and you restrict a lot of your food and you don't allow yourself to eat whatever food you want, you can either go down one path of, just allowing yourself anything and everything, and eventually you will get to that destination of just foods becoming neutral. And that's kind of, I think, for me, it got to that point where all I want is food to become neutral. I don't want to have to think about it. I want to forget about food because, I'd meet people and they'd be like, oh, I totally forgot I've got that in the cupboards or the fridge. Whereas
Yeah,
me,
that's a fun moment.
yeah, it definitely is. Whereas for me, I was just, obsessed. If I wasn't thinking about my breakfast, it'd be thinking about my lunch and so on. And I kind of just got to this place where I just wanted to just be free from that mental kind of chatter
Yeah.
um session.
Well, and you don't realize, I think a lot of people, it feels miserable while you're in it. You're obsessing with food and you know it's not fun. But
Mhm.
when you finally get past the point of obsessing about food, you're like, oh, there's a whole life out here that I have been
Yeah,
missing,
yeah,
absolutely not present for because I'm constantly worried about losing weight or what I'm going to eat or anything like that. And
mhm.
letting go of it is one of the best things you can do for yourself.
It really is. And I think, I think everyone will probably go through this period, even if you don't sort of go all in. Um, even if you start allowing yourself foods, that there's almost this fear like, what's who am I going to be without this? Am I going to lose my identity? Which I definitely had somewhat of an identity crisis throughout this because I thought, what am I doing? Is this right? Is this the right path to take? But you kind of open yourself up to new interests. Like, it sounds crazy, and it sounds awful as well. But I remember when I was, restricting myself a lot and was dealing with bulimia, especially, I wasn't interested in anything like surface level conversation I could have with people, but like even my dogs, like I'm absolutely obsessed with my dogs, and yet I didn't even give them any attention because I was just so focused on, you know, what I'd eaten that day or what exercise I needed to do. And it's sad because you just miss out on so much. And you think, how many conversations have I not, really been there? I was kind of thinking about something else. But you kind of figure you out a bit more as a person and who you are underneath all of that.
Yeah, and I mean, your brain gets comfortable in that eating disorder phase, and that's who you are. But
Yeah,
when you're changing, even if it's a good change, it's going to be uncomfortable because
yeah,
your brain is like, wait, we know this, we're comfortable with this. What are you doing? And like
yeah.
growing into a new person, it's scary, but
It
it's
really is.
if you see it through, it's definitely amazing.
It really is. Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. And it just opens up so much other opportunities as well.
Right.
You feel so much more free.
Yeah. So we only have like 10 minutes left. So I wanted to ask you specifically about exercise purging a little bit,
Yeah,
and because I don't have much experience with that. And I do have a few people that I've talked to. One of my clients, they deal with exercise purging, and a lot of them struggle with like the idea that even if they have a binge that day, they need to exercise a certain amount per day,
yeah,
or if they don't, then something's going to be wrong. So can you explain like how you kind of get over that mindset or
yeah.
some
I think
advice for them?
yeah. I feel like the exercise addiction again. It's kind of like this habit loop that you it's it's like that eating disorder voice is really loud, and you wake up and you just think, right, I've got to do this today, or I've got to exercise this much, or I've got to do this amount of steps, and that's a habit. And I think that's the biggest thing that anyone could kind of take away from all of this, that those thoughts of either about binge eating or exercising or even purging um, are just habit thoughts that we've thought about for such a long period of time. So it's about sort of recognizing when they sort of show up and what they say as well. So almost like become distant to them and realize that they're not actually you. And something that I found really useful as well was, I mean, I spoke to different people about this, but I would even say, journaling is a great way of kind of getting out thoughts and realizing what kind of thoughts are holding you back. But kind of ask yourself, what would happen if I didn't exercise today? And kind of see what comes up. And if it's a thought like, well, I'm gonna gain weight, ask yourself again, like, am I 100% that that is true? And if so, how much weight? Because there's no direct answer. It's just it's the eating disorder bullshit that just comes out automatically, and it's we just take every single word of that eating disorder as fact, and it's not true. It will tell you, if you don't do this run today, you're gonna gain a bunch of weight, and the truth of the matter is you're not. And I think for me as well, what really happened and what really helped was being around people that didn't have this obsession as well, and realizing that other people don't exercise as much as me, and yet they're a normal weight, they're a healthy weight. So why it's I guess it's about challenging those thoughts more than anything, and calling bullshit whenever you can, because they're not they're so not true, and they're so irrational, those thoughts, that are almost just bullying you into exercising so much, and or purging or whatever it is. um and I think it's about as well kind of asking yourself, what life do I want to live? And I think for me that was always a big, I tried to hold this vision quite close in my mind, that do I want to, be in a relationship where I have to exercise for an hour or 2 hours a day? Or do I want to live a life where I can go out to eat with my friends, or miss a workout and go and have drinks with them? Or do you know what I mean? And I think it's about getting really, really crystal clear, not with the eating disorder, because that will tell you lies, but to get crystal clear on what you want from your life. How do you want to live? And thinking, how do I do that? What steps do I need to take in order to do that?
Yeah. I mean, you just gave some brilliant mental management tips. So I think visualization,
Yeah.
highly underutilized. It's like when you're a little kid and you're envisioning your future and imagining, you should be doing that as an adult too.
Uh,
And visualizing what would it be like? What would my life be like without this? Who do
yeah.
I want to be? What does that person feel like? Super
So,
useful. And then I love that you said anytime, or you said, like question it and then answer it. And I had a coaching session one time where I was in this mindset of what if, right? And I was like, what if this happens? What if that happens? I didn't even think it was about weight, it was about something else. Because I always I was like in a lot of financial stress a few years ago, and it was like I was constantly worried I was like not gonna be able to pay rent or something. She's like, okay, what if? Like answer the question, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I would do this. And she's like,
Yeah,
yeah, and then what else would you do? And it's like you ask your brain all these questions, but I think a good rule of thumb is always answer it and
yeah.
always say like, this is how I'm gonna handle it.
And I think as well, your conscious mind, whatever you ask, even if you say, "Why is the sky blue?" automatically your mind will start coming up with answers like, "Well, maybe it's
Mhm.
because of this," or and it might not always make sense. And I think patience is also a key thing as well, because it's a habit that you've built and created and almost formed an identity around as well. But it's going to take time. But I think, like what you said, visualizing is such a powerful tool, and people talk about it a lot for success in business and whatever. But I think you can totally use that for eating disorder recovery as well. Visualize what kind of life you want to live, how do you want to be, how do you want to act. And I think with doing that and patience, you're going to be on the right track.
Yeah, and it's not a fast journey, it takes time, and even though I think my recovery period, when I went fully into recovery, then it was shorter, but, there's years of experience learning, it's a process. So,
Exactly, it
yeah.
really is. Yeah.
Okay, so that was all wonderful. Thank you for sharing all that, being vulnerable. It was great, and I think every time people share things like this, it helps other people out there. Like you were saying in the beginning, it's someone will feel less alone. They'll hear this, they'll relate to this, and you offered a lot of good advice. So tell my audience where they can find you.
So I'm most active on Instagram, so you can find me on the tag handle it's Hetti on Instagram, and also Hetti Jayne. I post videos on YouTube under Hetti Jayne every Sunday, and I talk a lot more in depth about sort of the mindset and how to recover and sort of my own experiences as well. So do you find me on there?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll put the link to her Instagram in my podcast below. And guys, I just realized that you can only put one link down there. So I've been putting, it's hilarious. I've been putting multiple links for months now.
Um,
And it like just all jumbles into one. And so I'm sure people are like, I don't know what she's talking about.
it's a learning process. I would not
Yeah.
know where to start with a podcast, so you're way ahead.
Oh, they're way easier to produce than a YouTube video. So YouTube is like when you go to analytics page, it's like, what are all the tags you want to use? What's all
Yeah,
this? And it's
yeah.
exhausting. But anyway, thank you so much for being on here.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Okay, guys, that was the interview with Hetti. I really enjoyed talking with this girl. And before the interview, we had a long conversation, and it was just very organic, very fun. So I'm sure that I will have her on again. But like she said, you can go to her Instagram, you can go to her YouTube. I hope that you guys enjoyed the interview. There will be many more. Everyone that I bring on the show, I'm bringing on because I think that it's so important to share their stories and give you different insight. And the more and more you can learn that it is possible for you to recover, the better. So I'm so grateful that she was on the show. I hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. I'm going to leave you here. But thank you for listening. Bye.